Well, happy Good Friday. It's been another crazy week, but we've started to see some encouraging news in terms of medical and scientific experts suggesting that our social distancing efforts in Oregon may actually be working. But they only work if we stay vigilant with our own behavior. And I implore you to stick with it. As hard as it is, stay home and save lives. And while most of us probably already assumed it would be the case, this week brought word from the governor that school has been officially canceled for the remainder of the year. I have a senior in high school at home, and I feel awful for these kids who have had their academic work disrupted, their spring sports, activities, proms, graduation ceremonies, all of it canceled. We don't have all of the answers yet, but I am confident that this community will find an appropriate way to honor these young people just as soon as we're able to celebrate together again. For today's video, I want to focus on how best we can support Gresham kids in the midst of our current reality. While we face this pandemic head on, we want to make sure that we're doing everything we can for Gresham's most promising asset, our children. For most of us, that means trying to navigate at-home learning, virtual classrooms, and about 1,000 emails and text messages from a dozen different teachers, all working to quickly deploy effective distance learning opportunities. And as a parent, I can validate that just that is overwhelming in itself. But I also want to encourage you to think about the deeper emotional toll that Gresham's youngest residents are facing right now as they face the new and profound anxieties and fears of an unknown future. To help equip our families with strategies to support our children as best we can, I invited a special guest to virtually join our conversation today. Christine Fitch is a licensed school counselor who has worked in the Gresham-Barlow School District for the past 8 years. In that capacity, she engages daily with students in ways that promote and support their academic, social, and emotional development, health, and well-being. So Christine, thanks so much for being with us today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
All right, great. Hey, first of all, let's just talk about what do you think our kids are facing right now in terms of everything being disrupted and anxiety and whatnot? What are our youngest kids thinking right now?
Well, it's a lot. And I think all kids have been impacted. The uncertainty, not knowing when we'll be back, not knowing what school's going to look like, it certainly does impact kids. I think we just have to meet kids where they are. We have to help them articulate how they're feeling, not judge how they're feeling, and just let them be able to express themselves. While at the same time as parents, and I know it's hard for parents are experiencing just as much stress and anxiety, believe me, at this moment. But we have to kind of find ways to manage our own stress and anxiety so that we can be there for our kids. I think an important message we want to give our kids right now is that, yes, this is a hard thing, but together and with support, we can do this hard thing.
Yeah. What is the appropriate level of information to give to kids? I mean, speaking maybe not so much high school, but kind of middle and elementary, what should we be telling them as parents to give them enough information to be smart about, their habits and whatnot, but not burden them with too much anxiety and fear? What's the appropriate discourse in that?
Right. That's a great question, and you're exactly right. We definitely want to have a balance in the information that we share with our kids, especially our youngest ones. I think it's entirely appropriate to have that conversation. We don't want to make our kids feel like we're keeping them in the dark, but you do want to have that conversation at a developmentally appropriate level. For younger kids, they do understand what germs are. They've probably learned about that, and before school was let out, they were talking about that with their teachers. So that's a good way to start about talking about germs and what's going on in the world. And you want to make sure for younger kids, you're not giving too much information. Just give them some factual information that helps them understand the situation, but not so much that exacerbates their worries and their stress about it. So give them just enough to answer. And then what I always tell parents is to follow that conversation if possible with something that is encouraging and hopeful. So you leave that conversation with some reassurance for your child that, you know what, we know exactly what we need to be doing right now. We're going to do those things, and that's what's going to help keep us all safe. So you don't just put all that information out there and then, just leave them to deal with it. Of course, older kids will have more questions and be more curious, and I think the older they are, the more detail you can give them, and that it's appropriate to talk to them about what's really happening making sure, of course, that you are giving factual information, and then let them ask questions and express how they feel about all of that.
Yeah, that's really great advice. Thank you. So one of the new normals, I think, for people is that everybody's at home, right? And so parents aren't necessarily going to work, the kids aren't going to school, everybody's under the same house, for an extended period of time, which is not normal for most families. So what strategies or advice do you have for parents to help navigate that time? Because I know that the homeschooling or distant learning, we're not equipped like you all are equipped to do that, so we can short circuit pretty easy. So what kind of strategies do
Right.
you have for families that are together for an increased amount of time?
Exactly. Sometimes we want togetherness, but maybe this is a little bit too much togetherness right now. But we have to do it and we can do it. I think it's really important that kids have some kind of structure to their day. And by that, I mean keep a regular wake up time, keep a regular bedtime, have regular and consistent times for meals.
Hold on,
Um,
stop, hold, Christine, hold on. Can you say that?
yeah.
Can you say that one more time for my three children? Regular bedtime, right? Okay, we got
Right.
it.
Right. It's so tempting, especially if you have teenagers, and it sounds like you do. They want to, oh, I can sleep in now. But we do want to keep a structure to our day, because what we know about kids is that we can help control their levels of anxiety and stress if we continue to have a structure. It really does help kids to have that structure. And I know some of us as parents working from home, we've had to learn how to have that work life structure going on in our own homes. So I encourage parents to sit down with their child and talk about, especially now that we are launching our online learning, to talk about chunks of time during the day that maybe we should reserve for that. We're going to get up about this time in the morning. We're going to have dinner about this time. We're going to go to bed. And keeping those routines can be really helpful in terms of just sort of lowering the level of emotions in our kids, and it helps them feel safe. And to be honest, it is a part of your day that you have control over. And I think right now, an additional thing that many of us are experiencing is we just don't have control over a lot of things. But keeping a structure and giving your children some choice in that structure is something we can control. And that will often help people feel a little bit better.
That's great. That's really good advice. Christine, what are some red flags or some things that parents should be looking for in terms of kids maybe not having not a mental health crisis, but maybe they're getting overwhelmed by anxiety and the news of the day and whatever. What are some
Yeah.
signs that parents should look for to know that they should intervene and help out?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I will preface that by saying, especially for younger kids, I would be pretty diligent about controlling what kinds of information they do have coming in. Maybe it's best not to watch the news when they're around, and don't just give them free access to online information, because, especially for younger kids who can't quite process all of that, it can be kind of damaging and increase levels of anxiety if they've got lots of that negative types of information coming in. But having said that, I think most parents should probably assume that they might notice some change in their kids. I mean, their whole routine is disrupted right now. They're staying home every day. For younger kids, I think some parents might find that their kids are a little grouchier or more impatient right now. Maybe they're engaging in more conflict, or not abiding by the rules, or being a little bit defiant to their parents. And I think all of that would be normal under the circumstances. It doesn't mean that parents still shouldn't respond by saying, that's not okay and we have rules in our house, but just give them a little bit more grace and maybe a little bit more leeway right now.
Yeah.
Some kids might become extra clingy. They might want to start sleeping in their parents' rooms. They may become a little more apt to cry easily. And I think all of that is pretty normal. Teenagers are going to express that a little bit differently. So I think it is good for parents to keep an eye on older kids as well. Just things like, are they spending a lot of time in their room? Are they disengaging from online social activities, or disengaging socially with their family? And just be willing to talk about kids, because it's a hard time right now for kids, and being able to open that conversation with them can really help you tell them that you're willing to listen without judgment, and help them in any way you can.
That's great. And as we talk about our older kids, particularly high school and everything that goes along with high school, and particularly your senior year. A lot of kids in their senior year right now aren't able to do the track or basketball or the choir state championship or theater or whatever. And it's been always a special time for the seniors, and all of that is gone. How do parents navigate that with those kids? What's the best way to help support them?
Yeah, that is really tough. And I think sometimes what we're all feeling, especially those kids, is almost very similar to a sense of grief, right? It's grief and loss for what we don't get to have. And I think parents can approach it that way, just by asking them how they feel, acknowledging those feelings and not judging those feelings, and not rushing too fast to say, well, we're going to be okay, so that's the least of our worries, or things like that. We really just need to sit with our kids and their feelings and say, I get that. That's really tough right now. That is really hard.
Yeah.
But then equally important is to let yourself sit with those feelings, but to help kids move on from those feelings, because we can't stay in that place day in, day out. And so I think a parent can play a role, in addition to saying, you know what, we don't get to celebrate you in some of the traditional ways that we're used to, but how can we celebrate you in a different way? What can we do right now?
Yeah.
And again, just helping your child to recognize that while we're in the midst of this right now, and it might feel like it won't end and things seem so terrible in terms of what we're missing, that there will be a day soon when we look back and we say, you know, we got through that. We did that. We supported our community. And I think there's a lot of learning opportunities in that we can help our kids with.
Yeah, I think that's great. Last question for parents. I think parents are feeling probably a little overwhelmed with the distance learning and everything that's coming in. And I think at the foundation of that anxiety is that they feel like they're not going to be able to, that their kid isn't going to learn during this time, and that they're going to be behind by the time school once restarts. And so some parents I've heard from are, doing 8 hours of education a day, and that's probably not right. And, neither is 30 seconds. But like, what do you have for parents for their mental health to in this teaching of kids, or helping to support, the distant learning?
Right. Please don't be doing 8 hours of this.
Yeah, right.
I think as we all start this, we're just kind of feeling our way. But I do want parents to know that we get that you aren't their teacher, and that many parents out there are trying to work and watch kids and have a bunch of things on their plate as well. So we're pushing out curriculum. It's not 6 or 8 hours a day of curriculum right now, because we're just getting into the groove. And we also understand that everyone has lives and stressors and anxiety. So what I want to tell parents, and would be mostly for parents of younger kids in elementary, because it is different at high school. I know we do want to get those kids online taking their classes, because that's important for credits right now. But for younger kids, if they're not in the mood, or if their stamina is just, I can only do half an hour right now, that is okay. So do what you can do. There are lots of other learning opportunities. You can go outside and explore nature. You can let them look up their favorite animal and learn about that. So if your child's struggling to stick with our curriculum, help them find something else of interest that they can learn about. But again, having a routine, I think, does help. But then also just give yourself and your child some grace. We are in really strange circumstances right now. No one is going to be held back. And we, as a school district, we will be prepared in the fall when we return, that we will know that we're going to need to do some catching up, and that's okay. We'll have a plan for that.
Oh, that's great. Well, thank you so much, Christine, for offering those words today. I think it'll be very helpful to our families and help the adults be able to support the kids in our community much better. So I really appreciate you being with us today, and thank you for all your work that you do with our youth. Really appreciate it.
Great. You're more than welcome. Thanks for having me.
All right. Thank you. Have a good weekend. A recent survey of 2,000 Oregon students sought to gauge their opinions of teacher quality, support services, school climate, and students' ability to influence policy, among other areas. Now, when I was in school, the answer to that question probably would have been maybe a longer lunch period, better lunch choices, more dances, I don't know, who knows. But remarkably, the most important issue that rose to the top for today's young Oregonians, cited as most important by 40% of those surveyed, was mental health services. Our young people face deep anxieties right now, even in normal times, and particularly need the help and support of adults in their lives in times like this. You are all doing amazing jobs of juggling and balancing life's new challenges in ways that were unthinkable even a month ago. I am so proud of our city and our families. I hope that the tips we heard from Christine today are helpful for your families as we continue forward. We will get through this, and the more we are able to help our children, the stronger our families and our community will be on the other side of this. Thanks for all that you do. Thanks for all your efforts. Remember to stay home and stay safe. And as always, I pray for your health and safety, and God bless. And have a great Easter.